Good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are joining us. It's 3 p.m. in the UK and 10 a.m. Eastern, and you're almost welcome to join us here on 0 Days Live. Now, you may have noticed there's a bit of a change here, and that it's normally Stuart in this seat. And here he is, as if by magic, but
What's
we can't
going
hear you.
on?
Ah,
What are you
there you
doing,
are.
Steve?
Oh, well, there was a bit of a delay there, Stuart, and I panicked for a second, and I thought I didn't want to leave our viewers waiting too long, so I jumped
Well,
in.
and that is very good of you, Steve. Again, jumping to my rescue. So for everyone that is a regular viewer, even if it's the first time you're joining today, welcome to the show. Bit of an unorthodox start, and it may continue through the show because, as we do say, these are live shows. And today is the first day that I've had real technical challenges. So it's probably well overdue, but we will get through it as best we can. But it may be that I disappear off screen momentarily, and it will be Steve that runs the show along with Kerry, but we'll see how we go. So, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. It is, of course, Monday, where in a few moments we're going to be joined in the studio once again by Mark Oakton, who's from InfoSec Partners, and we've been looking at securing education and online learning platforms. But before we do that, a quick heads up of some of the other subjects this week, which include the questions we should be asking around achieving GDPR compliance and ISO 27001. We'll also be getting an insight into how a CISO approaches digital transformation from Gary Hayslip from SoftBank. And we also have very special guest on GovSec Thursday as Alex Crompton, Head of Security Consulting at BAE Systems, joins us to talk about managing security through sustained emergency situations. And no more relevant as the one that we currently see ourselves in with COVID-19. So hello, everybody. Apologies again for the bumpy start to the show. Hope you're well. I'm Stuart Reed. I'm with Nominet, focused on cyber solutions. And as usual, I am usually in the chair to welcome our special guests. And if it's not me, it will be one of my able assistants, Steve or Kerry. Now, just a quick reminder about Nominet. We're primarily responsible for managing the .uk domain, which we've been doing successfully now for over 23 years, with something in the order of 15 million domains currently under management. And building on this strong heritage of understanding the importance of domain names for network connectivity, we also provide cybersecurity solutions to protect both governments and enterprise networks worldwide from cyber attacks, including providing service to the UK government's National Cybersecurity Centre. Ensuring people are able to be connected, included and secure is at the heart of what we do at Nominet. And it's important probably now more than ever. And with that in mind, we wanted to bring you an interactive show to bridge the gap potentially left behind by that lack of physical meetings and engagements taking place right now, and bring you 0 Days Live. And that's really for everybody within or that has an interest in cybersecurity. Now, I'm joined both front of house and behind the scenes with a highly capable team, making sure everything runs just the way it should normally. And when it doesn't, jumping to my rescue. And speaking of remotely, which is what we're all working towards right now, this week's burning question is, what is your worst isolation purchase? So please do let us know. Now, today for me, it's actually the same thing that I built just a couple of weeks ago as my best purchase. It's this. It's my running device that takes my smartphone and allows me to take it out running with me with part of my permitted daily exercise. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it, and it was bought with all the best intentions, but I haven't used it in the 6 weeks or so that I've had it. So it's making me feel a little bit guilty. But someone that is always running about, not least after me at the top of the show, it's Steve. So Steve, welcome back.
Hey, I'm back, this time for real.
Excellent. Great to see you as well, Steve. So you've seen what my worst isolation choice is. What's yours?
Yeah, so similar to you, Stuart, I don't know if you remember, one of my best purchases was my mouse mat, my good old 1990s mouse mat.
I do.
But I did go for
Yep.
the upgraded version, which has LED lighting around the outside. And I've just realized that actually, why did I buy one with LED lighting? It serves no purpose. Maybe if I had a clean desk, I could take a picture of it and put it on Instagram or something and make myself look cool about my home setup. But I never got a clean desk, so it's never going to happen.
Well, there we go. There's an option for you as you propel yourself into social media stardom. Now, speaking of stardom, today, of course, is May the 4th, isn't it, Steve? So what have you done in celebration?
I do have my my Star Wars t-shirt on in celebration, just to celebrate the day.
Excellent. Well done, Steve. Superheroes all around today. So thank you very much for that. Now, of course, this show isn't the same without everybody else joining us as well. So all of you tuning in at home, and we are delighted to welcome regulars and new audience members every single day of the week as we build ourselves an accessible community to bring people together, hear from others in the industry, get a round of what's going on in the news, share some thoughts on best practice, and of course, interject a bit of good humor along the way. With that in mind, we do, of course, cover a lot of important subjects, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And as a quick reminder, and as you saw at the top of the show, each of our 30 minutes or so here every day, we are absolutely live. So each and every day that we broadcast. And as such, there is bound to be, and there has been, a few blips along the way. But when and if they do happen, we hope you just agree that they're just part of the reasons you tune in to us and see us every day. And please do get involved as well. If during today's show or any of the other live shows you join, you want to ask a question, give a comment, please do so using the console on your screen. And one of us will read it out during today's webcast. Usually on point for that is Kerry. And speaking of which, where are you, Kerry?
Hi, Stuart. I'm here.
Good stuff. Nice to see you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Excited for the week ahead. We've got some good guests lined up this week, so really looking forward to it.
We do. As each week. Yeah, we've got another action-packed week. Of course, it's a short week this week because Friday is a holiday in the UK, but we're packing as much as we can into the 4 days. So, Kerry, remind us, or tell us, in fact, what is your worst isolation purchase? Because we've got a new question this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was trying to get all creative during lockdown and thinking about what skills I could try and enhance. Should I learn to cook? Should I learn to knit? And I thought I would give it a go at doing some henna. So I love a good henna tattoo when I'm on holiday, and I thought, how hard can it actually be? I ordered the henna kit, and it's the most awful thing I've ever seen. It's more like an ink blot test than actually henna. It just looks like I've drawn on my arm with a pen.
I was going to say, it does look like you've used a whiteboard marker or something similar to do that, but you know, you live and learn. So thank you very much for that, Kerry. So everyone tuning in, of course, we want to know what your worst isolation purchase is to date as well. So simply type that into the console on the right-hand side of your screen. Let us know. We'll read it out. Now, I did mention a few moments ago that we are very lucky to be welcoming back to our virtual studios Mark Oakton from InfoSec Partners. So welcome back, Mark. How are you today?
Hi guys, back again. Good to see you all.
Hi there, Mark. Great that you could join us. The last time we spoke to you was probably about 3 weeks ago now, actually. So it seems like an age ago. We were talking about securing critical national infrastructure back then. And interestingly, a bit of an experiment that you did in Monaco on the security of yachts. For those of you that are not sure what I'm talking about here, please do check out Mark's blog that is now live on nominetcyber.com. He very kindly guest authored the blog for us, so please do check that out. And also, if you want to catch that episode as well, it's available on demand as well. Now, Mark, you've heard you're an old pro at this now because this is now your second time back into our virtual studios. Fun starter question then for you. This week's burning question is, what is your worst isolation purchase?
Worst isolation purchase is easy because I did it. I collected it this morning, arrived this morning. I decided it would be a good idea to test some Wi-Fi security hacking devices that are new to the market. Arrived here this morning, tested them this morning, and there's a power button, but the power button seems to be an on button and there's no way to turn them off. So to make sure I didn't interrupt this this show, I've run up the garden and thrown them at the furthest point up the end of the garden, just in case they're going to do anything odd. So I'll investigate later, but at the moment, buying devices with without an off button is an old trick. I think people used to make kids' toys like that, didn't they? Make a horrible noise and have no off button. Yeah, waste of money.
No, know that feeling. So today, of course, we are talking to you about the shift in education online. So obviously something that's quite a topic right now, and many online learning platforms have now been set up. So how big do you think the issue of security is with all of these kind of plethora of online learning platforms that are popping up right now, that are now online?
Well, I think traditionally all these platforms, many existed in the past, but they were obviously predominantly created and provisioned for access from internally from specific environments. So some have had a bit of time to look at the security issues. Many have only just really looked into them. Many have been internal only applications. Many have been, let's put them on VPNs or restricted IP range access. But many are lacking in some of the basic security controls you'd expect from a cloud or internet provisioned solution.
And it's an interesting question I'd like to get your perspective on, because with the increase in these platforms and people using them, who's liable for the protection of the learners when they're at home? Does the school have the responsibility, or the college, the university, or is it the online platform themselves?
Well, it's a big question, and it's a question we've been discussing with schools and colleges for many years. Whether the school have a ongoing duty of care for the learners when they're outside of the physical environment, which is the school, and then you've got students who aren't in the school or college all of the time when they're learning anyway, before COVID-19. So yes, schools have a duty of care over the protection and safety of learners who aren't always just children. They are vulnerable children, vulnerable adults, and other groups that need protection and aren't always able to protect themselves. So schools and colleges are realizing more and more that they have a duty of care and responsibility for safeguarding when learners are at home in different environments. Some have been looking at it over the previous 3 to 5 years. Some haven't, and some have considered it's not our bag, and we'll only protect while they're in environment. But the guidance is that it's quite clear. If you're teaching students, you're responsible for the safety and security of that learning environment.
And I guess, regardless of where the responsibility lies, from a practical perspective and technically, what do students, or what could students do to ensure that they're staying secure themselves?
Well, there's two sides to it, really, from our perspective. One is the standard. Students have historically thought, when I'm at home, I am responsible for my safety, and if people are emailing me, talking to me on social media about out of school things, I've got to be aware and cyber aware for those environments. But if it's a school type topic, I consider that the school is responsible and will look after the security of those applications, those data, and if there's any messages flying around, they will protect me. The change for a student is that all of that activity is done now with them being at home, potentially on their own device or devices, that they are unlikely to be sure of the security of the endpoint device. So they do need to be much more careful about approaches and communication with themselves about school topics, not only personal topics, because the school don't have as much visibility and control, especially from a physical protection. In school grounds, teachers are trained to spot signs of children with issues. It's much harder for them to do that when they're remote. So the student has to be much more vigilant about approaches, communications, messages, and trends that come into them.
And I guess there's a reality that because you're not picking up on some of those cues because you're not physically in the environment, that something else needs to be there to compensate for it. There's a level of awareness that's needed. So Is it as simple as education? Is there a cyber awareness program that's needed here to kind of ramp up the awareness or the ante as more and more people are actually just digitally learning?
Well, yes, definitely. There's an awareness requirement to teach the learners to better protect themselves, but the fundamental shift and change needs to be in the protection levels provided by the schools and colleges. They often run distributed environments anyway, with multiple campuses or even multiple schools in a group. Whereas the auditing from either kind of Ofsted or ISI or other regional auditing establishments has always focused on concept. Sorry, can you hear me?
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah,
apologies. Didn't mean to cut through you, but I see, as if by magic, we have our genie in the bottle, Steve, appearing once again, which can only mean one of two things. Well, three things actually. He's either rescuing me from technical difficulties, he's raising his virtual hand for a question, or he's providing us a level of insight. I'm going to guess he's raising his virtual hand.
I am raising my virtual hand. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I mean, I think that cyber awareness program is interesting. I think you might have been cut off just before you finished there. Did you want to finish what you were saying?
Just let me finish that piece. Really, it's one of the problems for me, and we've seen for many years in our work with education establishments and the auditing standards themselves. Auditing for schools has focused on content filtering predominantly, stopping kids going to bad sites on the internet, right? Mm-hmm. As a result, schools and colleges have spent the majority of the money they spend protecting and blocking kids getting to bad things on the internet, right? That's not necessarily where the highest risk is, and it's usually not where the highest risk is. Take, for example, the data that is on a person's computer at home. If somebody gains inbound access and has access to that data unauthorized, wherever they got it from, that is far more damaging than potentially than a student looking at a bad site on the internet and being damaged by the content they see. So really, the shift here, from my perspective, has to be the schools and colleges need to take a risk-based approach, look at what's the most impactful to students and the school as a whole, and change the focus of protection to be closer to the user and the data and the endpoint, rather than focusing just on outbound content filtering and web filters.
Yeah, I think you're right, but some of that needs to also come from regulation, as you kind of suggested at the start as well, because obviously the schools have invested in that technology because they've been told they have to, and I think until the same is done from a security and a risk perspective, then they're likely to carry on doing the same thing. But what do you think students should be looking out for to avoid falling victim from a cyber attack?
I mean, really, everybody should be taking the stance of an attacker. Look at the mindset of any piece of inbound communication you receive. Assume that it is fraudulent or out to target you. Don't assume that everything is good initially. You get an email, you get a web link to click on, you get a strange message when you try and log into your machine or to a school system. Think that is suspicious rather than just plodding on and carrying on and entering it. So yes, a part of it is awareness and what should they look for, but it's the mindset. It's the mindset of we all know there are people out there who have been targeting and compromising school children and schools administration systems and account systems, finance systems for years because it works. School children fall for it, administration and accounts departments fall for it very frequently. So what do students need to do? Assume that all communication is bad until you verified that it's not. And then make sure that if you're now using your home device for accessing school-sensitive information, that your home device is secured. Is your home device the standard things? Is it registered? Has it got Windows updates? Has it updated it? All the patches? Does it have antivirus software installed onto it? And be careful what software you install. That's what they need to do, Are they in a position to do that? Not always. Not everyone has got the knowledge and the capability to make those decisions and decide whether or not their devices are secure. And that's where the big gap lies. The school can protect the applications and the central environment, but if you're now trusting students to protect their own devices and access all school resources with their own device, then there's a gap on ownership and who's liable to secure those environments.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier that some schools have been kind of shifting to an online learning kind of provision already over the past few years, and some schools haven't. But do you think that schools and colleges were prepared for that massive shift online, that almost kind of total shift online that we've seen over recent months?
I don't think anyone was prepared for that massive shift. And even where schools and colleges have made a significant move to enable learners to access systems remotely, it's always been as an add-on and almost a part-time optional extra, because the approach has always been, if something goes wrong, we'll turn that bit off, right? We'll turn that external access bit off, then we're cutting down and we're secured again. Well, you don't have that option now. It's now the primary method of communication. Like all the news about video conferencing security, it's now not an optional thing we'll do if we can't meet. It's now our primary method of communication. If it's the primary method of communication and you still have a safeguarding and compliance responsibility, and in some cases you're contractually obliged to provide services because you're being paid fees to do that, then you can't turn things off. So it's a different shift. So no, I don't think anybody was really prepared for this, but some are more able to cope than most.
Absolutely. And do you think there are some bigger risks around that quick transition to online services? Some things that perhaps schools won't have thought of?
I think that for me, it's the standard security technology we've all been advising schools and colleges to implement for many years that aren't a quick fix, and you can't really do them quickly. So identity and access management, privilege access management, passwords, multi-factor authentication, basic tokens for access. If they haven't done those already, that's not a trivial thing to implement in a crisis. And many have struggled with that approach. Monitoring of our activity, most schools have taken an approach, let's put in compliance and protection controls to block things. But not many have invested in technology that can monitor for bad or suspicious behaviour and make responsive action based on what they see. So trying to get visibility and control of lots of different remote environments that you have no access to initially is a challenge that not many have coped with very well.
Thanks, Mark. That's all from me, Stuart.
Great. Good stuff. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mark. And also apologies for cutting rudely across your answer earlier on. I was plagued again by network challenges and the radio silence my side suggested that it was ready for the next question, and I was totally wrong. So apologies for that. But one thing that was interesting that I just heard from you there was, about the way that we are really ramping up the use of these online platforms. I mean, we heard recently about lots more cyber courses going online as well, and we touched on last week, for those of you that joined, around the Cyber Start initiative. So it's a multi-level game for 13 to 18-year-olds to learn all about cyber from the DCMS, NCSC and SANS Institute. And they're kind of in response to the situation we find ourselves in now. Do you think those type of initiatives will continue post COVID-19?
I think they will, and I think they'll be mandatory in lots of areas. It's essential and it's incredibly valuable, those basic level awareness programs. The issue, of course, is to be effective and to be accessible to the vast majority of learners, they have to start at the beginning and have to include the basics, right? Now, dumbing down, and that's the right approach, dumbing down the advice and guidance so that everybody can understand it and make basic decisions is the right way to go, and it's essential and it should be mandatory. However, that leaves a big gap at the top end for who's actually deciding what level of technical protection and cyber control should I have, and who's doing it, and what's the response going to be when it finds something bad. So we see lots of environments and lots of learning programs that start off including the higher end and then are dumbed down somewhat, which is fine, but it means there's a gap at the top end.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Fascinating subject, and one that I know has resonated quite a lot with our audience. And Kerry's popped up there with some questions there. What we've got, Kerry?
Absolutely. Yes, we have a question in from Jane. She's asking if schools are delivering using platforms such as Google or Microsoft, do they need to worry about security, or can they just leave that to the tech giant?
Leave that to the tech guy or leave it to Microsoft?
To Microsoft and Google, yeah.
Well, we had an interesting client a couple of weeks ago who said, we're moving all the stuff to Google. We had 3 men looking after all the data and systems when it was on premise. And I said, well, who's going to look after it when it was moved to Google, and looking at the security in the logs? And the answer was, Google men do that for me, right? And that's obviously not what does happen. Google and Microsoft provide infrastructure services, application services, but they don't provide security monitoring, consultants, people, managed services, threat intelligence. So really, it's a virtual cloud hosting environment predominantly. You put your servers there, but someone still needs to look at what is the traffic, what's the threat, what are you going to do about it, are my staff, students being targeted, and make sure that you're covered.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Richard is asking, do you think that the UK is behind the curve in terms of shifting to online learning?
I don't see it any worse than other areas around the world. Well, we've got lots of clients who have got schools and school environments in lots of different regions and countries, and we have clients who are solely based in different countries. And we don't see it country specific. We see it as organisation and risk specific. Are they focused and understand the threat and the risk? And that's partly down to who are the governors, who are the senior staff within the school or college, and how much focus do they want to take on actual protection, child protection, and online safety, rather than just completing annual compliance audits. So no, I don't see we're behind. In some areas we're way ahead. In some we are behind, but I don't see a big gap across the board.
Okay, great. And then finally from the audience, a slight sideline really, but I think with all the talk about cyber and the skills gap in cyber, do you think that the current situation will allow us to upskill our workforce? And that's from Hannah.
I think well, we work in education, but we also work across lots of different verticals. And the last few years, there's been a big skills gap because you can't get the right staff. They've all got jobs. With what's happening right now, we're already seeing that lots of people are already available, and you can get more staff than you perhaps could before already. So I think there will be more focus on collaboration and moving to online and outsourced managed security services at whatever level. But there's also going to be an easier route to get people to come and work full-time within the learning environments, which can only be a good thing for the schools.
That's brilliant, thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Kerry. Thank you for everyone asking questions, and also thank you for your insights there, Mark, as well. I mean, one thing that's a real takeaway is it's clearly an exciting time in education right now from a digital perspective, more online learning platforms that we've never had before. Before we move to the news, I'm just interested if there's any final points that you've got, Mark, around education and the online learning industry.
Yeah, for me, it's an interesting time, and it's a time of change, and we all appreciate that it's not going to go back to how it was before. When we look at learners and staff, the part that's going to be challenging is junior staff and children who have got trouble with learning, highly achieving students, and already accredited, experienced staff, as we know, can work from home all the time, can work remotely. They understand their role. It's the ones that you're trying to get to work collaboratively together, learn from each other. And if we talk about skills gap and improving the skills of our staff, to do that, they need to be able to work together and learn from the more experienced senior staff. So I worry that there's going to be a lot of the junior staff will drop off and not take the focus, and companies and schools will just go and hire the more experienced. So it'll be harder for the individual employee to get up that ladder. And then the same with home learning for students who need more support. Yes, they can all do remote video chat, but it's the mental health issues, the concentration issues. How do you get closer and understand the mentality and the needs of the student when you can't see them? That's going to be need more tools than just better versions of Zoom and online learning platforms. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mark, for your insights and sharing your views on that today. Everybody, that's Mark Oakton from InfoSec Partners. Now, before we do wrap up today's show, we will do a quick wash up of the news from Kerry. So what have we got going on today, Kerry?
Yes, so before the news, we had in on the chat from Michael saying the worst thing that he's ever bought was petrol in this lockdown. There's not much of a need for that right now. If we had from ZDNet reports that research has demonstrated how hackers can take control of Chrome browsers with just one extension. The tool is called Curse Chrome, and some researchers have said that this has really lowered the bar for entry for potential hackers. In the Telegraph, they've reported that logon details for 500,000 Zoom users have been put up for sale on the dark web. Zoom is investigating and locking any accounts that have been compromised. And then finally, there's an interesting article in SC magazine on whether the new test of cyber resilience is actually whether you can withstand a pandemic.
Excellent, thank you. Well, it's, again, another interesting day for news, and Steve's going to obviously provide us some commentary from his perspective on there. But I think the SC magazine one, for me, is quite an interesting one. The resilience as business is being tested on this time more generally. Clearly, there's a significant amount of IT infrastructure pressure as well, and it's the kind of the piece that we talked about from Zoom just there. It's important, clearly, that as we're using more and more devices with password protections, that we're taking a kind of best of breed approach, not just from a basics perspective, but also from our security and vigilance perspective as well, to look at any suspicious behavior of people trying to take sensitive information. Steve, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just on that point with the Zoom thing, over the past few weeks or months even, we've seen lots of suggestions about different applications being hacked. First it was House Party, then it was Netflix, and now it's Zoom. And really all these stem from the same thing, that there's been a data breach somewhere, credentials have been leaked, and then they can be used for multiple different applications. And with so many people using Netflix, so many people using Zoom, at some point you're going to get the same kind of credentials being used that have been in a data breach available for those kind of platforms as well. So I think it's becoming more and more difficult to understand where some of these links have come from. And the other thing was just on the Chrome browsers in relation to education. A lot of education establishments are now using Chromebooks, using Google, using Chrome, and Chrome is often touted as, almost kind of cyber secure out of the box, because you can't really get malware on a Chromebook or anything like that. But I think that just goes to show that no matter what platform you're using, there's always some kind of vulnerability somewhere. So you should never kind of let your guard down, as Mark was saying about, always assume something is kind of bad in the first place. Because if you've got a bad extension and it's basically leaking everything you do on your browser, then that's just as harmful as a piece of malware that's been installed on a Windows device.
Yeah, I think that's a good point worth elevating there. So I appreciate that, Steve. Well, that is it for today. Thank you very much to our special guest, Mark Oakton from InfoSec Partners. Just a quick heads up that all being well with network challenges, tomorrow we will see the return of Gary Hibbard, who of course is Director at Cyberfort. We'll be discussing the questions that we should be asking to achieve GDPR and also ISO 27001 compliance. So to learn more about both of those and also how to make sure that you remain compliant with those, please do join us then. Of course, a quick reminder, all of these shows are available at your convenience on demand as well at nominetcyber.com/0dayslive. Until we see you again, have an excellent day and see you soon. Goodbye.